वर्णानामर्थसङ्घानां रसानां छन्दसामपि मङ्गलानां चकरतारौ वन्दे वाणी विनायकौ भवानी शंकरौ वन्दे भवानी शंकरौ वन्दे श्रद्धा विश्वासरूपिणौ याभ्यां विना न पश्यन्ति सिद्धः स्वान्तस्त्वमीश्वरम् वन्दे वन्दे बोधमयम् वन्दे बोधमयम् वन्दे बोधमयम् नित्यं गुरुं शङ्कररूपिणं यमाश्रितो हि वक्रोऽपि चन्द्रः सर्वत्र वन्द्यते श्रीसीतारामगुणग्राम पुण्यारण्यविहारिणौ वन्दे विशुद्धविज्ञानौ कवीश्वरौ कपीश्वरौ उद्भवस्थितसंहारकारिणी क्लेशहारिणी सर्वश्रेयस्करी श्रीसीतां नतोऽहं रामवल्लभां यन्मायावशवर्तविश्वमखिलं ब्रह्मादिदेवासुरा यत्सत्त्वादमृषैव भाति सकलं रज्जौ यथा हीरभ्रमः यत्पादप्लवमेवमेकहि भवान् बोधे स्थितिर्षावतां वन्देऽहं तमशेषकारणपरं रामाख्यमीशं हरिम्. Well, friends, here we are on this journey that we have undertaken together to investigate 3 Shastras. The Dharma Shastra of Manu, called Manu Smriti. Secondly, the Kama Sutra of Vatsyayana. Technically, the name is Kama Sutra. Sutra, you know, means a thread. That is a set of words or a string of words is a sutra. And this is a Shastra, like Dharma Shastra of Manu. But its name is Kama Sutra because most of it is in prose and in brief aphorisms. So that is the Vatsyayan's Kama Sutra. And finally, the Artha Shastra of Kautilya. So we are going to discuss three Shastras, right? Kama Shastra, Dharma Shastra, and Artha Shastra of Kautilya. Now, the very first question that comes to mind is, why choose these three Shastras? Why not take, let's say, Mandukya Upanishad here? If you're going to talk of Dharma, then why not? Or why not take some other text or some other Shastra? Well, the reason is that we are going to talk about a particular problem. And the particular problem is this, that some of the concerns in this world seem to us as contrary or conflicting. In fact, that is the problem of living. That very often we think this is right. And very soon we are compelled to think this was not right. Or that there are some people in the world who will say this is not at all right. It is not just a conflict of interest of one group against another, but it is a conflict from within. That I am pursuing this. Is this the right course? And will it bring all the things that I want to me in life? And I have to do certain other things, and won't that be contrary to what I am doing now? Right? So, how do we resolve this everyday dilemma? This dilemma of what is right and at what moment? For that, we go to certain texts in the Indian tradition which are called Shastras. And these three Shastras are concerned with how you lead a good worldly life, and a worldly life which leads to something higher as well. Now, in the Indian tradition, it has been said that human concerns or human aims or the purpose of life could be divided into three: Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Dharma, Artha, and Kama. That is, what do you live for? I live for Dharma, I live for Kama, I live for Artha. This whole world is something which provides me happiness in these three areas. So these have also been called as Purusharthas. That is what a Purusha or a human being lives for. I mean, here, don't pay attention to a very trite sort of a feminist objection that you were using the word Purush. No, the word Purush stands for women as well, and for, in my opinion at least, for the third gender as well. So whosoever is a human being whosoever is part of a human society, they live for these three things: dharma, artha and kama. Later on, in this division, they added another which was called moksha. So dharma, artha, kama, moksha, these became the four purusharthas, or the four aims of life. So the classical Hindu tradition would say that a human being has to fulfill oneself in these four areas: dharma, artha and kama. Now, in what I said so far, there are two things which are to be noted most: the Purusharthas and the Shastra. Because for Dharma, you must understand the Dharma Shastras. What is Dharma? धर्म क्या है, क्या नहीं है, कब कौन सा धर्म है, कब कौन सा धर्म नहीं है. If this is the ideal of life now, was it the ideal of life 2000 years ago? Or what was the ideal 2000 years ago? Is that the ideal today? If Rama obeyed his father, should I obey my father and this particular father of mine today or not? This is the question of dharma. It's a question of everyday existence. So who shall guide me? Where do I seek some help? In the Dharma Shastras. So there are two words here: Dharma Shastra, Dharma and Shastra. Similarly, Artha Shastra and Kama Shastra. So let us first try and understand what do we mean by this term Shastra, right? Now, of course, there is a common understanding among two kinds of people. One is the average Indian. हाँ साहब, शास्त्र होते हैं कुछ, हमें शास्त्र की बात माननी चाहिए. There are Shastras, we should all listen to them. But the average person perhaps doesn't know anything more than that. As a matter of fact, these days it's a very amusing thing to see on television. You know, there are so many debates on women, on what is right, and in the field of religion, and you have these men with nice long beards and in saffron or white sitting there as knowledgeable people, and very often they say, "Hamare shastron mein ye likha hai." This is what our Shastras say. And if there is somebody audacious like me around, he asks, "Bhai, kaun se mein? In which Shastra?" Pandit ji, it's all right, it is written in our Shastra, but which Shastra? And I have not seen to this day any of these famous religious preachers or contestants and debaters from the religious side quoting a Shastra, a specific, and saying this is it. So this is the average understanding of Shastra in India. The average Hindu, he is going on by practice. A certain way of life he has chosen. He knows that this is right, this is not right, this is how you should treat your human beings, and you should feed the birds, you should feed the animals, and it is better to be vegetarian, but it is not prohibited to be non-vegetarian. And he says, "Ye Shastro mein likha hai, and this is how I live." Right? Then, this is the common understanding of Shastra. In India, among the non-Anglophonic people, then we have the Anglophones of India. You see, India is actually divided into two jatis or two categories. One is the Anglophones and the other are non-Anglophones, all the languages put together. Anglophone is the governing class. Anglophone is the university professors, the judges, the Supreme Court and other judiciary, the IAS officer. You have this whole establishment, and which is through this so-called window to the outer world, this beautiful phrase Jawaharlal Nehru gave us about English, it is connected to the rest of the world. And then there is the bulk of India, which is happy in itself, which is not very much aware of anything except the exploitation that the Anglophones are doing to them. So, if you ask the Anglophones, what is a Shastra? They say yes. There were some things, some classical books, ancient time, but they are not relevant today. Today we live by the Constitution. Indian Constitution is what I live by, isn't it? So they go to the Indian Constitution, to various sections of the Indian Constitution to resolve a particular matter. For instance, there was a major judgment a week ago. Yeah, you sent me a summary of it. Thank you. On Article 377, which criminalized homosexuality. And the Supreme Court, after many years of struggle, struck it down finally. And I have not come round to studying it in detail, but from what I saw, in my humble opinion, all the bases of giving that judgment are misplaced. They have nothing to do with the Indian reality. The honorable judges are talking about freedom of choice between two consensual adults. So what two adults do, that is those who are more than 18, within the walls of the four walls of a room, is not the business of the state. And the state should not be allowed to intrude. This is one of the reasons why they have struck it down. I can't appreciate it. Years ago, I even published an article about it, because if two people, a brother and a sister, very consensuously think that incest is good, and they do it within the walls of the four walls of a room, and if it is consensual and they are both more than 18, then does it become right? I'm amazed. Nobody argued this in the court of law. Nobody argued it. That cannot be. Because the Supreme Court wants to fall back on the Indian Constitution. It wants to fall back on the articles of this present day Constitution, which has very little to do with classical law or with the classical practices. Now, there was a very simple case for striking down 377. I gave public lectures on it about 10 years ago in Habitat Center. They are on the net also, and then I wrote articles that in India, and we'll talk about it in detail and read that text also when we go to Kam Shastra. We'll read the lines, we'll read the original and the context, that there is a third nature, and for them to indulge in sex according to their nature is perfectly natural and it is not criminal. And that was sufficient basis to strike down 377. I had even communicated it to the earlier bench of Supreme Court. But a lot of time was wasted by the High Court of Delhi first, then by the Supreme Court of India, on this because they wanted to find out a Western solution within our constitution. They wanted it in terms of the rights of an individual, the rights and orientation, as they call it. It's a very dicey word, orientation. And they wanted that the totally un-Indian act should be struck down on the basis of some kind of a modern Indian choice, which is not at all Indian, which is entirely according to certain Western parameters of individual choice and individualism. The very question of what is individual and what is social was not taken into account. Anyway, I am giving you these examples only to show that a lack of understanding of classical Indian law creates more problem with our heritage, more problems with our social system than it can possibly solve. As it took years and years to decide upon this. So, the Anglophonic class, the educated class, or largely the class which draws education from the Western sources, they think of Shastras as something which have ceased to be of any importance. So, Dharma Shastra, therefore, for this particular section of the people of India, is irrelevant. It has nothing to do. And they all the time talk about constitution. Say, I live by modern constitution. I do not live by any classical law or ancient practices, either of Hinduism or of Islam or of Christianity, and they don't even take into purview these things. How do you then make the Dharma Shastras or Shastras as something worthwhile for them? After all, what is a Shastra? Now, the term Shastra does not apply to just morality. It applies to morality only in the case of Dharma Shastras. But Shastra is a term which applies to different areas of knowledge, because there are different kinds of Shastras. I have mentioned three. We are going to talk about the three now: Dharma Shastra, Artha Shastra, and Kama Shastra. Although the sequence in which I'll talk about would be Dharma, Kama, and Artha, but traditionally it is Dharma, Artha, and Kama, because you cannot fulfill any Kama or desire unless you have Artha, or not just money, but a system to live by. Artha doesn't mean just money. That's one meaning of Artha, but it means a structure, a system, a state, an order. That is what Artha means, Artha Shastra means. So, what is then a Shastra? The very first question that arises is, what is a Shastra? Now, one of the commentators has said, Shastram iti shasanopayam. What is a Shastra? Shasanopayam. It is an upaya, an instrument of shasan. And shasan here is not about prashasan, as in modern Hindi, administration, but it means order, orderliness. So, shasanopayam, it is an instrument of creating an order within a given practice or area of human concern. Now, there are so many human activities, like literary activity, like musical activity, like constructing the idea of the state or political activity, like warfare, like erotic life, like making buildings, like making different kinds of buildings, utilitarian buildings, aesthetic buildings, temples, making dams on rivers, or making, in ancient India they were not very fond of dams, they made only small dams which could easily overflow, but they used to make huge lakes. So making sarovar. Now each of these activity had a orderly compendium which was called Shastra. So if you want to know how to lead a good erotic life, then you go to Kama Shastra. If you know how to establish a very prosperous, peaceful, strong state, then you study Kautilya's Artha Shastra, because Artha there means the formation of a state, statecraft, you see. If you want to know how to perform great plays and what is beautiful theatre, then you go to Natya Shastra. If you want to cure your diseases, then you go to Ayurveda. There it is not called Shastra, Ayu Shastra, or it is called Veda there, Ayurveda, but it is for all purposes a systematic analysis of how diseases happen and how they are to be cured and what are the medicines to be used and from where they are to be procured, etc., etc. So a Shastra, a Shasanopayam is a system of knowledge in a particular practical area, right? Every Shastra is not about morality. It is not 10 commandments. It is not just do and don't, or what is called in traditional knowledge system as vidhi and nishedha. Do this and don't do this. So Shastras are primarily investigation into an area of knowledge and how to succeed in that area. That there should be success is very important. And what is success? And how do you see and how do you measure success? That is also defined in every Shastra according to that area of knowledge. So, Sushrut will tell you that what happens when a particular disease is cured and what are the symptoms. And what are the symptoms of a healthy person and what are the symptoms, lakshanas of a unhealthy. So that classification, after observation from things that are happening, is written down, and that is a Shastra. Right? Now very often it is said that a Shastra is prescription. There's a common image, the Shastras were written by Brahmins, and Brahmins were controlling Hindu society through Shastras. They wrote all kinds of Shastras, they were prescribing and prescribing and prescribing. And the moment you did not you did not obey them, then you became condemned as a adharmic person, as somebody who does not follow the injunctions. Now, this is not what a Shastra is. This is just a post-19th century colonial Christian proselytizer's image of what a Shastra is. A Shastra investigates a particular area of knowledge and how to succeed in it, how to practice it, how to achieve the best results in it. And then it observes how people are doing it. What are the ways in which the experts are achieving? And then they describe, not prescribe, they describe. See, the important thing is they describe that the best of experts in this area have said this, have practiced this, have defined it accordingly. And this is what they say. Then they say, well, some expert says this, another expert says something else. And the third and the fourth, there are the different opinions. All those different opinions are given. And then very often there is a discussion as to who is better and what are the reasons for making that choice. So a Shastra is a practical investigation and a description of how human achievement is done in a given area. So, if you take for instance Natya Shastra, then they'll say, well, this is the contribution of this particular Acharya called Tumburu. These are the dance postures which were given by him. This is how the drums were made by another person called Swati. And then similarly they'll go on into greater detail. So Shastra investigates a continuous process of achievement in that particular field. That's very important to understand. You see,